Welcome to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein, talking about the evolutionary, the revolutionary, the inspiration and the perspiration, and those aha moments that change everything. And now, here's your host, Rich Goldstein.
Rich Goldstein here, host of the Innovations and Breakthroughs podcast, where I feature top leaders and the path they took to create change. Past guests include Rick Cesari, Yoko DeBear, and Howard Getson. This episode is brought to you by my company, Goldstein Patent Law, where we help you to protect your ideas and products. We've advised and obtained patents for thousands of companies over the past 26 years. So if you're a company that has software, product, or design you want protected, go to goldsteinpatentlaw.com, where there are amazing free resources for learning about the patent process. And you could email my team at welcome@goldsteinpc.com to explore if it's a match to work together. You could also check out the book I wrote for the American Bar Association that explains in plain English how patents work. It's called the ABA Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent. I have here today Steve Waddell. Steve is the president and CEO of NASONI, where he guides the development and production of groundbreaking fountain faucets. His mission is to save 1 billion gallons of water annually by 2030. Which is in accordance with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But Steve wasn't always in the faucet business. He started from scratch and he bootstrapped it. He financed starting and growing his company by entering entrepreneurship contests, as you're going to hear about in just a moment. I'm honored to welcome here today Steve Waddell. Welcome,
Thanks,
Steve.
Rich. Thank you.
Hey, how's it going?
Happy to be here.
Okay, great. So then, so before you were in the faucet business, like what did you do for a living?
The first 25 years of my life, I started out in the apprentice school at Newport News Shipbuilding and graduated with honors and got the Niels Christensen Award and moved on to engineering from there. So I spent I spent 7 years on the waterfront, the next 9 in engineering, and the rest in IT. So quite a varied background, and you learn a lot about everything when you work on the waterfront and move to engineering, move to IT, and how things go together. But I became known most for process improvement at the yard.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then, and after you did that, I think you went and you helped your wife to launch a business.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent the next 11 years after that helping my wife grow her business as a government consulting startup from nothing to a multi-million-dollar business.
Great.
And in fact, I lease space from her right now. That's where our headquarters is.
So that's great. And so was that both of your first business that you had?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
And
so
she still runs that company now. She's the president and CEO of Reed Integration. That's the name of it.
Awesome. And then something struck you to say that there's something more that you wanted to do. When
you're an inventor, when you have an inventive mind, even though I was at a Fortune 500 company like Newport News Shipbuilding, I was still an inventor because I was solving problems they had that they couldn't solve day in and day out. I just wasn't getting benefited from it. The shipyard was. And, I became really good at it and known for it, solving many pretty tough challenges they had. But to bring NASONI to market, it always got tired of sticking my head on the faucet. And, you watch Shark Tank, you get inspired to do things. And, when you're an inventor, you say, well, I can fix this, right? And one day I happened to be watching a video, and my wife and I've always wanted to go to Rome. There's the nostalgia of pizza, and she likes wine, and, the Roman Colosseum, watch the movie Gladiator, and all those cool things. So it makes you want to go there and visit it. And so I'm watching a video on it, and I saw these girls on a cobblestone street walk up to what they call a NASONI on the streets of Rome, which looks like a fire hydrant. And it takes water from the Apennine Mountains, flows through the Roman aqueducts, up through these NASONI, and there's a tube hangs out the side of it where water flows out of it and down to the street. And dogs can come up and drink from the bottom. But if you want to drink, you plug your hand on the bottom and it pops out the top like a water fountain. And I'm like, wow, the arc of inspiration fired inside me. It's like, why aren't all of our bathroom faucets like this, right?
Right.
So now when you buy a NASONI fountain faucet, everyone that buys one gets a copy of that story on a cloth. It's a cleaning cloth. And it comes with our faucets. You can use it to wipe your eyeglasses or, wipe the faucet off. But that's the inspiration behind the company.
Yep.
and by the name of the company itself as well. So if people been to Italy and they've drank from those fountains, they'll recognize the name NASONI immediately.
That's fascinating. But I mean, it didn't just spring into life by itself. So how did you get it started?
So the first thing I did, it was January 2014. I remember it vividly because I was off from work at the shipyard. It was a day off. So, I didn't immediately stop working and start this full time. So you kind of start it while you're still working, right? Like everybody else. So I went to Lowe's or Home Depot and I bought a fiberglass sink. I bought a faucet. I bought a shutoff valve that I could put on the mouth of the faucet. And I put it all together in my driveway and I hooked up a garden hose to it. And I drilled a hole in the top of the faucet to simulate what would be needed. And so when I turned it on and I turned the shutoff valve, stopping the downward flow, it came out the hole out of the top. And voila, I said, hey, I'm going to do something with this. That was my proof of concept, right? So I was kind of excited about it. I made a video of it and I showed it to my stepfather. Now, my stepfather had been in the plumbing side of the carrier construction effort at Newport News Shipbuilding for many, many years. I showed it to him and he laughed. He goes, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, when you got to rinse after you brush your teeth, I said, you either got to cup your hands, tilt your head, or use a cup, right? And he goes, no. I said, no. I said, what do you do? He goes, oh, hell, I just take my teeth out and I put them in a cup. Because he was 80 years old.
Right.
So he bets me $1,000 that nobody would ever buy one. And I said,
that was your seed money.
Yeah, exactly. So now, I got this bet. Now that makes me the person in me. I'm all about it. If you tell me I can't do it, that makes me want to try even harder to prove I can. If I already thought I could, right? So that even strengthened my resolve.
Yeah, and I guess part of the resolve is you had said that millions of people in the world, billions of people in the world start their day with a bad faucet, or they start their day with how do you put it? Like an
inefficient solution.
An inefficient solution.
Yeah.
It's like an inefficient way for us to get water from the faucet, to brush our teeth, etc.
To start and end our day, both.
Yeah.
So when we think about, like when I was in the shipyard, I learned all about systems engineering, right? And systems engineering, we take functional requirements. What are the functions a solution must do, right? Well, we never did that with the faucet. The faucet industry has never done that, right? All they did was take what was done and started in Rome and Pompeii 2,000 years ago, and water continues to come out and go down. But if you do a functional analysis, what are the other things you do? If it goes down, I can wash my hands, right? But if I need an eye wash, can I do it with that? No. Not without tilting my head underneath it, right? And the flow is too strong.
Or what most people end up doing is cupping their hands and inefficiently using that.
Well, and then the thing is, my wife, before bed every night, she used to take her hands, cup her hands, in order to rinse facial cleanser, would splash her face. Water gets all over the countertop. It's messy. Plus, you're using too much water. We're wasting water. Same thing happens. EPA will tell you right now that a lot of Americans, when they rinse shaving cream, they waste up to 10 gallons of water just when they shave to rinse the face off, right? So with our solution, with a fountain stream, I reduce that water flow as much as 88% from a regular faucet. So instead, let's say when you brush, right, you're told to brush for 2 minutes. A normal faucet is 2.2 gallons. Run it for 2 minutes, that's 4.4 gallons. If you run our fountain feature and leave it running, and it's only 0.26 gallons, if you run it for 2 minutes, that's a half a gallon, 0.52. So 4.4 versus 0.52 is a huge water savings.
Yeah, that's tremendous. So let's talk about how you got it going. So like the initial kind of initially you bootstrapping it, meaning like you're using your own funds to start this business. But then you kind of like got some outside help through the use of contests. So tell me the story about that.
Sure. Well, just so everybody kind of understands what I'm talking about, but I could show you the faucet. So the way it works is you simply rotate this lever. And when you do, the downward flow stops flowing down and it's rotated upward through a flow regulator. That's what reduces the flow rate and creates the perfect water fountain. Okay, so
if you happen to be watching this on video, then you can see that. Otherwise, use your imagination.
Right. So what happens is now I've got this idea for this faucet, but I didn't know how I was going to engineer it, right? Because I don't have CAD modeling expertise. I'm not skilled in fluid dynamics, things like that. So I decided to try a tool called Elance. Well, first I went to a university and I thought they could do it as a student project, but they couldn't. They never got back to me on it. So I gave up on that. So then I went to Elance, which is now Upwork. Elance merged with Odesk. This is 5 years ago. And I found an engineer in Thailand that's from the US that had both CAD modeling and fluid dynamics, and we did an engineered design. The way it worked was at the mouth of the faucet, we had a ball lever valve to rotate and shut off the downward flow. But what happens is when the water came past the fountain nozzle, when the water flows past the fountain nozzle and the spout, and you even just going downward, the water would still come out of the hole at the top. So we had to create a way to stop that. So what we did is we put a spring-loaded ball valve up here. What happened, all of that became custom parts, which, are not very reliable. But at the time, that was my design. And so once I had a design, you get excited. Every inventor says, oh, I've got this great design, right? I need to protect it. Somebody's going to steal it. That's the first thing you think, right?
Right.
So that's when I went to try to find a patent attorney. And I couldn't find one locally. I didn't have a lot of money at the time. And that's when I went to India. I found one. We filed a patent in the US, a utility and a design patent. And, 2 years later, as I continued to evolve this idea, it was turning into something. And now I'm like, well, you know what? I really want to make sure this patent goes through. So I need to get a US attorney that really understands, the process and can respond to the office action, because everybody, when you file a patent, is going to get an office action, right? It isn't going to get approved on the first go around.
Right.
And that's when I got the US attorney to go ahead and help me the rest of the way with that patent. But, once I had the patent filed, the neat thing was that the very next summer, there's a startup competition then, and it was put on by Inc. magazine and Cox Media. And the prize was $10,000 in cash and prizes for the judge's favorite and $250 for the audience favorite. And they down selected to 5 companies. Now, I didn't even have a prototype. All I had was my CAD model and a design patent that had just gotten approved, right? So I go in front of the judges and the audience and I make my pitch. You got 2 minutes and there's a timer on you. And the long story short, I won the $10,000, the judge's favorite, and I won the audience favorite for a $250 American Express gift card. I took that money and I spent, it was about $7,500 to hire a company. There's a book called The Mom Inventor's Handbook that I bought at the time. And she had referenced somebody that did some prototype work, which I looked him up, got a hold of him. We made that prototype. He was in Maine. And the prototype, like I said, was $7,500. It came back, and that's really all it was a modification to an existing faucet. But it was good enough that I then took that, I made a video of it and me using it, and I submitted it for a brand new TV show that was coming up at the time, and it was called Steve Harvey's Thunderdome. And I got accepted to go on the show. So next thing you know, I'm getting paid to fly out to Hollywood and be on this show on stage with Steve Harvey. And I'm competing against another entrepreneur for the cash prize, right? And so now, you got to win the audience vote. So I watched the other entrepreneur after he gave his pitch and I gave my pitch, and we're both standing up there while the audience is making their vote. And he was just kind of standing there lollygagging. I look around the audience and they're kind of looking back, and I start, raising, there was music playing, right? So I kind of dance around. I try to get the audience engaged and make it fun, right? It paid off because I won.
Nice.
So, that went a long way.
But are you sure maybe Steve read the wrong name on the card? Is that possible?
Yeah, right. But I got the check in the long run. But the cool thing was that cash was the huge thing I needed to take that big next step. Because the next thing I did was I had to come up with a better engineered design. Because what I didn't like about the design we had now was it was all custom parts, right? So what happens when you make custom parts? You have a chance for failure because they're not proven, they're not tested. So I said, let's redesign this. Now that I have some money, some real money, let's re-engineer this so that it uses commercial off-the-shelf components. We call those POTS components that have been reliably tested and proven. And that's exactly what we did. But that meant we had a whole new design. So guess what? I had to file another patent. That's kind of a cool thing now because I'm building this patent portfolio. Mm-hmm. And so we filed that patent and then went into producing a bunch of pilot prototypes, if you will, that I started now testing in homes, including my home. I installed one in my sink. I installed one in my wife's sink. And it was great every night now to see her, instead of cupping her hands and splashing her face, she now turns the warm and the cold on at the same time and gets a warm, gentle fountain stream and can dip her face in it and just rinse away the facial cleanser. So that allowed me to test and prove out, the fact that is it going to do what we needed to do, and will it work well? Will it be reliable? And we did that over a year, right? So yeah, that was really cool. Winning really what helped. And I encourage anybody that's needing funding to look for those competitions, because hey, you never know, man. If you not only if you win, can you win money, but it also helps to validate the idea. And so I'm speaking to this one group, and giving my presentation, and the lady says, "Hey, can you put a filter in this thing? Because our tap water isn't any good." And I looked into it and I said, well, if we put it into the faucet, if you engineered it in, it would be too small. So that's when we developed this under sink water filter. So now we have an optional water filter that people can buy if they don't like the tap water, to ensure you have fresh, clean water in the bathroom. You remember Flint, Michigan, right?
Yeah, certainly.
With all the lead in the water.
And in a lot of places, though, they're just not accustomed to drinking the tap water. There's not an expectation that you would drink it, and so then you had a solution then for people that don't have really good tap water.
It's ironic you say about drinking it, because when you brush your teeth, you're still going to use that water.
Yeah.
So you're still going to ingest some of it anyway, unless you're using bottled water, which is very expensive and not really good for the environment because all the plastic waste that gets generated.
Yep. I mean, see, I grew up in New York, and we've got really great water there.
The pizza restaurants claim that's what makes their dough so good.
Yeah, and the bagel places too. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I was a kid in the late 70s, we traveled across the country for the entire summer, and we went to lots of hotels and different kind of small towns, what have you. And it was kind of shocking to us that you couldn't just drink the water from the tap.
That's right.
Because growing up, I mean, we never even heard of bottled water. Like there was Perrier.
Yeah. Well, the great thing is we have a manufacturer here in the U.S. So in Maryland, we actually make these filters made right in the USA, assembled. They're not just assembled here, they're made here.
Mm-hmm.
And they're NSF certified, NSF 42 and 53. So against lead and cysts and all those nasties.
Great. So then there was another contest you entered that you didn't win. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, the great story there. That's an interesting story too. That was called Entrepreneur Elevator Pitch. And that was at first strictly on YouTube. And now it's been put on TV as well. But it was at the time, I think, sponsored by Sprint. But I had to fly out on my own nickel this time instead of unlike the other show. And so I fly out to California, and I've got these new pilot faucets, which look great. And I'm thinking, how am I going to present this? This is a show, right? So I wanted to make it entertaining. So I went to Walmart, and because I couldn't bring stuff with me other than my faucets, and I bought a shelf that's on wheels. I put 3 faucets, one on each shelf, and then I had a faucet in a bag, and I covered it all with a big black cloth. Now this show, the way it works is, you get on an elevator and you got 60 seconds to pitch, and while you're going up, if they like the pitch they hear at the top, the judges open the door, give you a thumbs up, and you get to come out and finish your pitch. If they don't like it, they give you thumbs down and you go back down. So I get on the elevator, I give my pitch, and then I'm going up, I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be great, right? I'm going to knock it out. And next thing you know, I'm going back down. I'm thinking, what the heck happened? So, long story short was 2 weeks later it aired, and I saw the judge's reaction. And one of the people said, oh, you didn't show us the product. That's mean, and somebody else, another judge said, yeah, this world always leaves you wanting more. And the other guy goes, well, he didn't tell us what he wanted. He didn't show us the product. So I say thumbs down. So they never saw the product. They didn't even vote on that or whatever. They just voted on the fact I didn't show it to them, which to me, 60 seconds, I wanted to just build that intrigue and then show you. So anyway, long story short on that was, I'm thinking to myself, why did I fail at this? What's the meaning behind it? Why did I spend all this couple $1,000s flying out here? And, what did God have in store for me there? And next thing you know, I get a call, and it's a guy, his name is Ben. And he goes, Ben, my name's Ben, and Ben Barris. And he said, I had a call from a lady from the Richmond District SBA that you might know, and she said I needed to meet you. Well, it turns out they rode the school bus together 50 years ago. Their mom, his mom drove, and she worked for the Richmond District SBA. That I worked with my wife's company. I hadn't seen her, talked to her in 4 or 5 years, but apparently she saw that YouTube episode and told Ben, "You got to meet Steve." Well, Ben works with a couple of investors in Minnesota at the time, and he said, "I'd like to hear what you got to say about your product and learn more about it. And if you're interested, I'll pass you along to them." And he did. He did pass it along to them. We had a call the next week. They liked what they heard, but they said, "Look, if we're going to go any further, we think you need to come to Minnesota." So I'd never been to Minnesota. I've always heard about Mall of America, and they weren't far from that. So my wife and I flew to the Marriott there, the JW Marriott attached to the mall. What a great mall. That place is huge. Mm-hmm. And I got to talk to the general manager of the Marriott, show him the faucet. I'm always selling, right? And so anyway, we met with them. They loved the faucet and wanted to work together. So they made a major seed round of investment for NASONI. And that allowed us to take the next major step, which was, finish out our remaining patents that we wanted to do, finish out certification testing out in California with IAPMO, which is the world largest plumbing certification agency. We got 6 green certifications. We're certified for the U.S. and Canada. And then we had our initial order of faucets made in different finishes, which were delivered late last year. So that was amazing. So the long story, the moral of that was, if I hadn't have gone on that show and failed, where I didn't get even to present to the judges, Marcy Posey in Richmond would not have called her friend Ben. Ben wouldn't have called me, and I would never have met the investors in Minnesota. So you never know, when one door closes, is another one right around the corner about to open. That's the message I have for your listeners.
Absolutely. And that's an amazing message, because you can't always, we like to label things as being, well, this is a good thing that happened and this is a bad thing that happened, but you just don't know until down the road what actually you thought was going to be bad actually turned out to be something great.
That's right.
So that's awesome. And how's it going now with the company?
Okay, so it's very interesting. I'll tell you why, because our go-to-market strategy was in January to bring on board a sales force, a commission-based sales force that were experts in the field. So they're called manufacturer representatives. And we have Delco Sales in California. We have Champions Marketing in Texas, Ben Franklin in Florida, Virginia Maryland Associates here locally. And we sent them all a pallet load of faucets and filters. And then COVID hits. And now nobody can go out really and do much marketing of these new products. You can't do trade shows. None of that's happening now. Mm-hmm. So over the course of the next 4 or 5 months of this year, running into May, my board and I got together and we said, well, what do we need to do? Okay, well, I think we need to boost up our e-commerce channel. Mm-hmm. Right? So we joined the Amazon Launchpad program. You can find our Amazon store now. Just go to amazon.com/NASONI. And you'll see our store. We have an amazing store. There's video, there's installation video. Check it out because it's really cool. It's one of the coolest stores I've ever seen. Awesome. But it's called the Amazon Launchpad program. I'd never heard of it until I researched this. Then the next thing was, we have Shopify. That's what our regular website's built on. Now the problem is we didn't build it for sales to begin with because we weren't trying to compete with our manufacturer representatives. So, at the time, really, we were just trying to present it in a good light, provide information about it, and so on. So now I'm in the process of implementing some stuff called ClickFunnels. You may have heard that one.
Yep, I know ClickFunnels.
Yeah, so I'm working on some of that now, which is pretty cool. I'm listening to those podcasts as well.
Okay. Yeah, you might want to check out the I Love Marketing podcast by Joe Polish.
Oh, yeah, it's a good one?
Oh yeah, it's a great one. I'm in one of his groups, and I'm actually going to have him as a guest. I'm going to be interviewing him next week. Episode
nice.
coming
What's
out.
His specialty?
Well, he's I guess you'd say internet marketing. He was a carpet cleaner, and so he started by learning how to market his own stuff, carpet cleaning stuff, and then he became one of the most respected gurus in internet marketing. And he's a big connector. He connects industry leaders, entrepreneurs, kind of the authors of probably most of the business books you might have are in his various groups. So interesting guy. Yeah. But Yeah, check out the I Love Marketing podcast, and he also has other kind of like lots and lots of recorded programs. Really great stuff.
I'll write that down. Thank you.
Yeah. And but yeah, no. So that's a great direction to go right now. I mean, e-commerce is huge. I mean, through the pandemic, e-commerce has just exploded. It was already on a growth trajectory, and it just kind of brought it up out into the stratosphere for sure. And internet marketing is a great way to get your message out there, to build an audience, build a group of people, and start, getting your message across to them. And
the thing is, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
And I'll give you a perfect example. So when I built the website, you might have heard of Donald Miller in StoryBrand.
Yep.
Got the whole StoryBrand approach. I went there last summer. I went to his training workshop in Nashville. I actually was on stage with him at that event. Great guy. He's all about clarity of your message, right? So we kind of followed the StoryBrand process when we built our website. In fact, I hired a StoryBrand guide company, Rule 29. They're the ones that built our initial website. But, again, we weren't building it for selling things necessarily. It was more informational because we didn't want to compete with our manufacturer representatives. But what I learned now, I hired an e-commerce expert to teach me a little bit about what I don't know. And one of the first things he had me do was install a tool called Hotjar on my website.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows heat maps, and it shows scrolling heat maps as well.
You get to see what people are really doing on your website. Yep.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, when he showed me the results, and he's like, this is how far down 75% of the people, they stop right here above the fold, and they don't look any further down. 50% go this far. And when you start to realize that, you realize how important it is to put the most important messages in that space, right?
Right.
And if you're not getting them to scroll far enough, you say, well, why is that? Let me change my site to accommodate.
Exactly. Well, that right there is the whole key to internet marketing. It's not about great ideas. It's about, it's partially about great ideas, but what it's really about is it's about analytics. It's about measuring and then iterating. So you do something that you think is a great idea, but then you measure it and you see what happened. And
so
then
you're spot on. You're right in the next point I was going to make. What we did is he had me install Google Analytics, right? So what we did, he said, okay, go to your homepage, and we said like the world's first fountain faucet. He's like, why do I care? If I'm a customer, why do I really care? What does that do for me? So we had to change our message. But the very step, or the button underneath that said buy now. So he said, let's see what happens. Let's go. When somebody clicks on buy now, the first thing you do is see the faucet and the price. And so let's look at Google Analytics, and we did, and we had like a 90% bounce rate. And he goes, that's because you haven't showed them the reason why they need it. You haven't, warmed them up to the faucet first. And that's what the Google Analytics did. It showed the bounce rate, right? Yep. So now you say, okay, we got to take them through a step. This is the difference between a regular faucet and a fountain faucet. And then this is how you determine which faucet you need. And there may be like a lead page that says it helps with chronic health conditions, for example. And you can talk about water conservation, all the people that care about green and saving the planet. They're going to want to see a water conservation lead page. Those different kind of things you can do. But the whole point, back to your point, was you need Google Analytics installed to get the data.
Right. And
things like Hotjar can give you the maps.
Exactly. Well, you want to measure things and then iterate. It's like you don't expect that your first idea is going to be the end all. And it's like even once you have that buy now button, then you split test. Well, let's try a red button versus a green button. And then you run that for a while, and you get to find out that the red button outperforms the green button by 30%, and then you switch it over to the green one. And then you say, okay, well, once we have that buy button, let's try launching a video versus like bringing them right to the price or whatever, and you can split test that. And so basically, I guess all I'm saying is that with internet marketing, it's about endless testing and iterating. As opposed
it couldn't be any more important than what we're doing, because we're taking and creating a paradigm shift, right? We're trying to break people's old habits of doing things the way they used to do with a faucet and teach them a new and better way. Right. So we have to really make sure that message is coming through correctly.
Yep, exactly. And so if people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, how do they go about doing that?
First thing is they can go to our website, nasoni.com. It's NASONI.com, very simple to get to. We also have an Instagram page, just instagram.com/NASONIFF, as in Frank. It really stands for fountain faucet. Same with Facebook, facebook.com/NASONIFF. It's the same thing.
And also, you'd mentioned that that you have the store on Amazon, and you're particularly proud of the way you set that up, and that I think was Amazon.com/NASONI, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
If you go on there, there's the store homepage, and at the very top, there's also an installation tab. If you click on that, you can see videos on how to install our faucet, our center set, how to install our widespread, and how to install our water filter. I mean, it's loaded with content, and I've never seen many other Amazon pages with as much detail. I'm really proud of what we've done.
I love it. I love the passion that you have for this product, for your company, and the mission that that you are bringing out into the world. And I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. There is one last thing I'd like to say, if you don't mind. That's okay.
Of course.
When I look back at my life, and I look back and said the first 25 years we're building, nuclear powered aircraft carriers and submarines, and I looked at the next 11 years with my wife's company, and I said, is that really the legacy I want to leave behind at the end of the day? When I'm done working and I want to retire. And I thought, no, that's not it. And when the faucet idea came up, I thought, you know what? Here it is. I want to create a product that disrupts a mature market to make people's lives, everyday lives, better, and at the same time saves water to benefit the planet, and along the way be a good role model to my sons and other entrepreneurs. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm now on it full time, and I'm very happy to be doing it because it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And again, I appreciate you being here. Hopefully you'll get to see you again sometime soon and see your faucets everywhere.
Rich, thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web at innovationsandbreakthroughs.com, and we'll see you next time.